This video is part of a series that is designed to support the Audible version of deploying Microsoft Dynamics 365 Sales and Service, which is available on both Audible and Amazon.com. I'll be sure to include links to all versions of the book in the description of this video. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching. This is a quick update to this video because of some information that was created after the book was written. We thought that Microsoft Dynamics was not planning to deprecate contracts and contract lines. We see here on July 10th, 2020, we have a notice about deprecation. So I'm going to define deprecated first. Deprecated means we intend to remove the feature or capability from a future major release. The feature or capability will continue to work and is fully supported until it's officially removed. The deprecation notice can span a few years. After removal, the feature or capability will no longer work. We're notifying you now so you have sufficient time to plan and update your code. So there's a couple of things that should be pointed out here. First of all, let's scroll down and find out that indeed this does apply. If you go all the way to the bottom, this applies all the way down here to contracts, contract line items, and contract templates. Those are all those three things are pretty much required when you use contracts for your service contract management. And it says these entities are deprecated and will be removed. And it says this functionality has been replaced by entitlements in Dynamics 365 customer service. So it's just really important before you move to the next part of this video that does show entitlements and does show contracts and contract lines, that in the future, they're not saying exactly when, these features will be removed. I will also say that it's difficult at best in the current release to try to get contracts to actually work in terms of, I mean, they work and everything, but in terms of being able to see it. So I'll just show you really quickly. I believe I created one called contracts. Take a look at this. Notice that when you attempt to load contracts in a dashboard, components are added to the dashboard. They're not supported to be shown in this client, and this is the Customer Service Hub, which is the unified interface version of Dynamics. So ultimately, I need you to have this information before you begin to even watch this video so that you understand the current context. Everything else in the video remains the same. Okay, thanks. As we mentioned in the book, it may be useful to understand the difference between entitlements and contract lines and some of the differences in features and functions of each. We'll go through these here, and then we'll demonstrate and look at a few of the features in the application itself. So first of all, entitlements are now considered to be the more or less default solution for contract management in Microsoft Dynamics 365 customer service. For many years, contracts and contract lines serve that purpose. They are still there, contracts and contract lines. They're just sort of hidden, and they need to be surfaced into the interface to allow people to use them and manage them. Entitlements are directly related to the customer in a relatively simpler and flatter structure. So there's no two tiers or anything like that. There's just simply entitlements, and they're related directly to the customer. With contracts and contract lines, there's a two-tier structure where you really do need to create the contract, where you manage the metadata around the contract, and then the contract line or lines that determines the sort of type of service and some of the terms around that service. On entitlements, there's no pricing. So there's no real pricing built in right now. You can create your own pricing. You can create your own custom attributes on the entitlement, but there's none in the current configuration. On contracts and contract lines, there's actually a pricing feature where you can put different prices on different contract lines, and those prices will roll up to the overall value of the contract. Entitlements generally are simpler. There's less business rules. There's less overhead, I guess you could say. Whereas contracts and contract lines have more more features in a way, or more statuses, for instance, like hold and copy and so forth. There are some enforcements that go on with contracts and contract lines as well, in terms of what you can and cannot do with respect to certain stages of the contract. So if there's no way to just very easily and simply sort of bring a contract back to life, so to speak, entitlement's a little bit simpler. Entitlements can use both case creation and resolution, case resolution, to count down or to consume an allocated number of cases. Contracts and contract lines can only count case resolutions. So if you have a contract or a contract line that has a certain number of cases, the counting only happens after the case is resolved. That's also true if it's minutes or hours. With entitlements, you're able to actually use case creation and resolution for countdown of cases. So that means that you will subtract a case from the allotment by creating one if you set it up that way, as opposed to resolving that case. It's a subtle nuance, but it might be important for you. Entitlements feature a native ability to prevent new cases from being created by the system if the allotment or entitlement is expired or exhausted. There is no such function for contracts and contract lines. You could affect that by creating a plugin or JavaScript to match that functionality, but you'd have to do that. Entitlements can be related to service level agreements. Contract and contract lines are not related to SLAs because the SLA entity did not exist when contracts and contract lines were created. And I think that when Microsoft rolled out entitlements, they rolled out SLAs about the same time. So they were designed to work together in that regard. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these entities. From within customer service, you can't really manage directly entitlements. And in order to even see entitlements, you need to switch down here below from service in the sitemap to service management. Service management shows a list of the entities that are set up for customer service in the modern unified interface, which is what we're looking at right now. And as you can see here, we have entitlements right here under service terms. So if I click on entitlements, I can go ahead and create an entitlement, and I'll show you what this looks like. So let's just say 200 cases. We'll just grab a customer here. Very similar to contracts, entitlements have a beginning and an end. We've given this a year. And then here, as I said, you can specifically relate this to an SLA, to a service level agreement, if you have one. What we're essentially saying here is that this customer has purchased 200 cases from us in terms of service. The allocation type is number of cases. Now, as you can see, you can have number of hours. So it's possible to allocate number of hours. That's similar as well to contract and contract lines. And then this is the feature that we talked about before, where you can set it to decrease remaining on case creation or resolution. So we'll go ahead and do resolution. So here you have total terms, and this is where you have to put the number in. This is actual number, because you'll see it says remaining there. So that could be hours, right? And that's why there's a decimal, but we'll go ahead and just say total terms. We'll just go ahead and save that. And so now we have, this customer has an entitlement. It's, as you can see, it's a relatively simple entity. You can tie products to the entitlement. You can tie contacts and entitlement channels, which is interesting. There's where you would create multiple channels if you needed to. And I'll show you how that looks, what that looks like. So an entitlement channel, it would be something like, you can see here, phone calls. So that means 150 of these, this is optional by the way, but 150 of these are phone. And then what we can do is we can create another channel that says the remaining 50 are some other way. Let's say email, let's just say. So, and again, you can see what the channels are about, and you can see how you can carve these out through different channels. Okay, so that's the entitlement concept. And of course, the way it works is simply that for every case that primary biometrics is resolved. So if anyone opens up a case for primary biometrics and the case is then resolved, when it's resolved, this will be decreased to 199 and so on down the line to 0. Okay, that's entitlements. So now what we'll look at is contracts and contract lines. Okay, one of the things that I want to point out is that this is a relatively new situation, I believe, is that you can't actually create for instance, a dashboard that shows contracts in the unified client. So we're just going to do a shortcut, just an end run, just to show you how they look and work. And it just could be that Microsoft is going to deprecate these, but it's still worth it for you to know that they exist and what they can do. Also, you may end up with a version of Dynamics that has them. So go ahead and show that right here. I'm going to go to Contracts, Results, and I'm going to click New Contract so you know. Contract template, that's the thing. Contracts can't exist without a template. So you have to choose a template. I'm going to go ahead and choose the service template. That's by default. It comes up by default. So let's look at contracts really quickly, and you'll see some of the differences. So here's contract. Let's just call this one, same thing. Let's call it 200 cases. Same exact thing as entitlement. Let's choose a different company this time. And you'll see we have a contract start date, and we have a contract end date. And some of the little bit of functionality that's different is that it'll automatically calculate the days. This is the bill to customer, and then this is what we were talking about where there's pricing on the contract. There isn't pricing on entitlements. And then you can have things like whether there's any kind of a discount or not. And then there's a service level. There's gold, silver, bronze. This is entirely customizable, and it's also optional, obviously. Okay, so that's very simple, basic information about the contract. So that's the contract. So to get to contract lines, you click here at the top, and you click contract lines. And now you would create an actual contract line, and you can have more than one line on a contract. And this could be the 200 cases. And here you can associate it with a product. Notice with entitlements you can associate it with more than one product. Here you can associate it with just one. You can put a location in here if you need to. The start and end date is inherited. And then here's the quantity, 200 of these cases. And then here, as I said before, you have some pricing. So if it's $10 a case, that's $2,000 or $20,000, depending on what your prices are. And the discount. You can put a discount in if you want to. And then that'll show you what the net is. You can do things like serial numbers, and then here you really do need the total cases and minutes. Now, you'll notice it's hours with a decimal in entitlements, but here it's actually minutes if it was time-based. But we're doing case-based, total number of cases, so we're doing 200. We'll go ahead and put that 200 in there. And then if you did do hours, it would be by minutes, and you'd have to multiply by 60. And the reason for that is because sometimes you can close a case with a resolution of 15 minutes, right? So they're using decimals in entitlements. Here we're using minutes. We'll have total cases of 200, and we'll save and close. All right, and that's essentially it for contracts and contract lines. But now that you know the difference between these two features, one of the most important things to think about is the version you're using, first of all, and whether or not there's anything on the contract and contract line which is missing so much for entitlements that you would be inclined to use contracts and contract lines. You don't know when they're going to go away in the future, and if you're on an on-premise, it may never go away in the future, because I know plenty of organizations that use Dynamics on-premise for years and years, and nothing changes. But the point is that if there's anything you see on contracts and contract lines that is not on entitlements, it's quite possible, without any programming, to make certain changes to the entitlement entity in Dynamics and extend it to meet those missing requirements. So for that reason, we here lean toward the notion of using entitlements, absolutely, if you're planning to use the latest version of Dynamics. And if there's anything that's missing, then that can usually be easily rectified. The only reason we can see why you'd want to go with contracts and contract lines is if you happen to be on an on-premise version that is not going to change for some time in the foreseeable future. All right, I hope this has helped. Thank you.